Hello everyone, my name is Jose Avalos. I'm an associate level designer community at Avalanche Software, and in this tutorial we will learn about the randomizer, another one of the new Creativi-toys we have made for Disney Infinity 2.0. The randomizer adds an element of, randomness to the levels. It can be used to keep enemies on their toes. Imagine, for example, a boss fight where you have to defeat a wave of enemies before you can damage the boss, but what if that wave is random? In that case, you always keep the player more in their toes, because otherwise the player would be, oh, again, 3 guys, again, I know what to do. Whereas if it is a random wave, then you can surprise them. So let's open up the ribbon, let's go to Creativi-toys, and let's look for the randomizer. It looks like some kind of dice. Yeah, you can see that there's 2 dice to reflect, the random nature of it. So let's see how this works. The way the randomizer works is that you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 10 triggers. These triggers can be connected to any Creativi-toy, and the way it works is that another Creativi-toy will call the randomizer and say, hey, pick one of these triggers, any one of these triggers that has any logic connections associated with it, and make it run. Just choose one at random. So let's say, for example, that we want to create different waves of enemies. For that, we're going to be using the enemy generators. Let's place one of these here. They should be around here. So let's place 1, 2, and 3. And just to activate the randomizer, let's put a trigger button around here. Alright. So the way we're going to do is that the trigger 1 will spawn one enemy from here. Trigger 2 will spawn a different enemy. 3 and 4 will spawn enemies from here and from this enemy generator, and 5 and 6 will spawn enemies from this one. And finally, we're gonna have a 7th signal that will destroy all enemies and display a text to say, hey, they're all dead now. So let's get to work. So let's pick up the wand. I'm sorry, everyone. And let's say, okay, new logic connection, random trigger 1. And let's say we will spawn a soldier of clubs. Okay. And let's say that trigger number 2, it can be connected to this same toy, but instead of making a soldier of clubs, it's going to spawn a soldier of hearts. Now let's do the same thing using signals 3 and 4 for this second enemy generator. So let's connect it. New logic connection. No, I'm sorry. Okay. New logic connection. Random trigger 3, and let's select this enemy generator, toy box, and soldier of clubs. New logic connection. Random trigger 4. And let's spawn a soldier of hearts costume. And same thing for 5 and 6. New logic connection, trigger 5, clubs, and new logic connection, random trigger 6. It's gonna spawn soldier of hearts. And now let's make it so number 7 eliminates all the enemies, so random trigger 7, it's gonna be remove all. It's around here, remove all. Same thing again for the other 2 enemy generators. So random trigger 7, remove all. And let's also have it so once we step on the trigger, we generate enemies every, say, 5 seconds. So for that, we're going to be using a repeater. Let's say that after we step on the trigger, stepped on player Annie, We put it on. Let's configure it to say 3 seconds. After the period of time, so it is repeat, we call action, which will choose one of the 7 random signals. Also, let's make it so when it is number 7, we stop the repeater, so it doesn't spawn any more enemies. And finally, yep, that should be it. So let's get started. We step on the trigger, and it spawns 1 enemy, then 2, then 3. It generates. There's a probability that it will spawn the same enemy, but that's okay. I mean, that's usually the nature with these kind of random objects. Even though it loves generating enemies from there. And it killed all the enemies because we reached trigger signal number 7, and that one killed all of the enemies. And that's the way randomizers work. Every time you call it to action, it will look between, one of the 7, or in this case 7, but it can be any number of triggers that have an associated logic connection with them, and choose one of random. The more of them you place, the lesser probability one of them will be executed. The way that the randomizer works is that it chooses one of the different triggers that have associated logic connections with them. So in this case, the probability for choosing, the signal that killed all the enemies was 1 out of 7, or around 15%. But if instead we had used all 10 triggers, it would have been 1 out of 10, or roughly 10%. So that's really it for the tutorial on randomizers. I hope that this has been useful to you. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments or in the forums.